Welcome back to the Daisy Cousens Show. I am here with the founder of CPAC Australia, the very fabulous Andrew Cooper. Andrew, welcome to the show. How are you this evening?
Oh, thanks, Daisy. I'm fantastic, and thanks for inviting me back on. I always love chatting to you. We always have good form.
We always do, and I'm so thrilled you could come on. I was desperate to get your take on this Elon Musk business. And I mean, I have to ask you, how do you think it appears to the rest of the world that our Australian PM is attempting to go toe to toe with billionaire Elon Musk? I mentioned in my editorial that I think watching dogs try to walk on their hind legs is less awkward than watching this back and forth. But, you know, what's your opinion?
Well, I think there's two issues here. Number one, Anthony Albanese doesn't give a stuff about how we appear internationally. This is obviously something he's concocted to play to a domestic audience. But what I can say is a frequent traveller to, say, the US, and I noticed that just what a sort of what a sort of an authoritarian government we've had down here for some time, and it started during the COVID years, and we've just continued on. So, it is noticed, and it does affect our reputation. And I had one American say to me once, he said, I used to think you Aussies were like Crocodile Dundee types, and you're not Crocodile Dundee, you're like grandmothers hiding under the bed, So, it doesn't play well.
It really doesn't, and what really doesn't play well is certain comments that certain politicians make. And you know the politician I'm talking about, and that is Tasmanian Senator Jackie Lambie. She went viral on X, formerly known as Twitter, the other day for this little clip. Let's take a look at what she said.
Elon Musk has no social conscience or conscience whatsoever. I don't know, whatever Elon Musk is on, it says that that's okay to continue to air that is absolutely disgusting behaviour. And quite frankly, the bloke should be jailed. And the sooner that we can bring rules in or do something about this sort of game playing with our social media, the better off we're going to be. But quite frankly, the power that man has, because of that platform that he's on, it's got to stop. It has absolutely got to stop.
I mean, that's fairly. She wouldn't sort of be out of place in sort of early 20th century Germany, in my opinion, with that, to use an extreme example. But it's that kind of authoritarian thinking. Do we need to jail Elon Musk, Andrew?
Well, I think, Daisy, first of all, we shouldn't look to Jackie Lambie for insights into where we should take our country. I mean, we should look to Jackie Lambie for a chuckle and a giggle every now and then, and she delivers that in spades for us, right? But I think what Jackie is shared with us is probably the knee-jerk reaction of a lot of Australians, and that is we don't want, we don't want violence proliferating throughout society. We don't want, we don't want this sort of material being readily available. That's the knee-jerk reaction, right? But then then we all think, as parents of children, as responsible citizens, we think, well, how can we address this and take control of our own individual responsibility? But Jackie, who she talks about Elon Musk's power, I think Jackie's been in the Senate seats too long because she's got a little touch of the authoritarian power grab herself, and she calling for someone to be jailed because they run a platform that has content uploaded to it by individuals, to me is just absurd. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy, and just goes to show you just how warped this sort of debate has gone in Australia over recent years.
Yeah, and it really has become warped, particularly with this issue, because, I mean, as you mentioned, like you and I, probably everyone can agree it would be good if there was less violent content on the internet. But this isn't about violent content generally. It's about one particular violent video that, even though, yes, it's a horrible video, it's much less bloody and ghastly than all of the snuff films that are available on the internet. It's clear to me that this obsession with this one video is masking a political agenda, isn't it?
Of course it is. I mean, this is, this is absolutely, everything is politics, and this is a classic example. I mean, this is absolutely a political play by both the Safety Commissioner, and then it's been weaponised by Albanese and the Labor government. There's no doubt about that. And the thing that when I look at these sort of things, I ask myself, well, who's the victim here? Who is the victim of what's happening? Oh, well, someone who watches the video is a victim. Well, don't watch it. It's a very simple, don't watch what you don't like to see.
Yeah.
And if you are saying that maybe, perhaps, the religious leader that was attacked, perhaps he's the victim. Well, he's come out and said, look, I'm happy for this to go up on Musk. I think it'll be a warning to people that this is the, this is the bad outcomes of these sort of, violent debates, I guess, is the way to put it. So I don't know who the victim here is. I think what they're doing here is they're just concocting a political show, and Albanese thinks there's a lot of mileage to be had in going after quirky billionaires like Elon Musk.
Well, yes, and he wants to, I mentioned in my editorial, he wants to rally support to pass this mis/disinformation bill, doesn't he? That's why he's going on about this.
Yeah, and can you imagine what's going to be disinformation in the future? I mean, you give, the creeping powers that this e-safety commissioner, commissar, will get, and then if the misinformation bill is passed, which I can't believe it will be, but I suspect it might be. Can you imagine the creeping powers that will be gradually gathered under that piece of legislation? It's literally, scary, it's Orwellian, it's all those terms. I was involved some years back in a High Court decision, a High Court matter with my think tank Liberty Works, and we took the federal government to court to try and invalidate a piece of legislation called the Foreign Influence Transparency Scheme. Now, that was a piece of legislation that has a chilling effect on free speech, and we lost that in a split decision in the High Court, and the judges in their write-up of the decision said that basically this theory that there's an implied right to free speech in the Constitution, it doesn't exist. It's not there. We cannot rely on the Constitution to protect our right to free speech. We've got to grasp it and hang on to it ourselves. The people of Australia have to be wary of this, and we have to make sure that we fight for every bit of free speech that we can gather, because this sort of issue here, it's typically what happens, right, is they grab power under the guise issue that they think that the public is outraged. Yeah. And people like Jackie Lambie and Anthony Albanese, they stoke the fires, they make people fearful of what's possible. In the meantime, they're gradually taking our right to speak away. And the misinformation bill will just be another layer on top of this, as you well know, Daisy.
Oh, God, yeah, absolutely. And the scary thing is that Peter Dutton, who was so opposed to the misinformation bill, rightly opposed to the misinformation bill last year, has all of a sudden jumped on the bandwagon and is saying, oh, well, yeah, of course we're willing to, possibly pass this bill in the wake of this. And I think what it reveals, Andrew, is you're right, Australians, we do need to fight for every bit of free speech that we have. But I don't think most Australians will, because my theory about Australians is well, not you and I, but most Australians have a very toxic relationship with government because we've lived in a vast welfare state, all of our lives. So we expect to have government everywhere, which means that politicians like Anthony Albanese, like Jackie Lambie, and dare I say it, at least in this instance, like Peter Dutton, they can get away with this authoritarian type of rhetoric because Australians don't know any different. Do you think that's a valid point?
Well, I think it's very low on the radar of most Australians. Tony Abbott, when 18C was a big thing, with the Human Rights Commission and the implications of 18C and those poor QT kids, which one quite well, getting caught under that legislation. Tony decided not to pursue that. And he later says, once he's left office, that, he regrets that decision. And I think, I think Peter Dutton might have some regrets down the track too if he actually starts supporting this and other similar legislation. Because as Conservatives, you've got to believe in the individual. You've got to believe in the rights of individuals to make choices for themselves, good or bad. And you don't believe, you reject this belief that big government, this Orwellian big government, knows better than the individual. And unfortunately, this legislation plays into that. This is actually giving power to big government to tell us what we can hear, what we can say, and ultimately, pretty well, what we can think.
Yeah, and you know, the scary thing about this proposed legislation is that it effectively, just for all you foreigners out there, it will make literally government the sole arbiter of truth. Government will be exempt from these misinformation laws. Opposition parties won't, other politicians won't, you know, everyone else won't, but the government, nothing under this legislation that the government says could be possibly considered disinformation. So everyone overseas, that is the dystopia Australia is currently living in. Now, look, Andrew, just before we go, we have to chat about that delightful portrait that's sitting behind you on the bench of the God Emperor himself, Donald Trump. Tell me, I think it's beautiful. Where did you get it?
So Donald J. Trump signed that for us, for CPAC, in February. It's signed by him. It's a bespoke portrait of him. It's signed in the corner CPAC 24. For CPAC Australia. So that'll be going up for auction at CPAC. And in the meantime, it's sitting here in the back of my office. Now, I've got to say, you know, Daisy, I don't consider Trump the God Emperor, but I know many people do. And, you know, I think, you know, in a two-party race, I'd rather have a portrait of him behind me than a portrait of Biden. So, you know, I'll be cheering for Trump, a successful Trump, because I think the world needs Trump. The world needs to reject Biden and the crazy Democrats at the moment. And, you know, those Democrats they're partly responsible for what's happening here in Australia. You know, that old adage that, you know, if America sneezes, we catch a cold. That's certainly the truth at the moment. There's a lot of free speech measures in the states that are trying to be implemented through some of the states. And, you know, our authoritarians here are picking up on those and trying to do the same.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've always said I have American YouTube subscribers who say, why do you pay so much attention to American politics? It's because it bleeds down to us. We are so influenced by American popular culture and politics. Of course, it's in the interests of Australians to pay attention to it and offer commentary on it. Andrew Cooper, fantastic to have you. Just tell us quickly, CPAC is on this year. Tell us, CPAC 2024, what are the dates?
October 5 and 6 in Brisbane. We have a state election up here. We're taking the fight into Queensland. Once the Conservative bastion of Australian, but been under authoritarian socialist rule for some time. Hopefully we can move the needle back a little bit. It's yet to see how the opposition will play out, but in the fullness of time, let's give them a chance. So we're up here in Queensland, 5 and 6 of October.
Fantastic. I most certainly will be there, and so will a lot of other very, very fun Conservative people. Andrew Cooper, as always, you're a legend. It's a pleasure, and I can't wait to have you back on the show again soon.